So we decided to have a series of a few weeks on the journeys of the neshama. But obviously, in a few weeks, you can't have a full expression of the journeys. We know that the neshama, as we understand it, is part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Vayipach, Ve'apav, Nishmat Chaim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu blew into man a living soul, and it became that man carries part of God inside. The Zohar says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu blew part of him like a person. When you blow out some air, it's coming from the very insides of you. HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So we all have a neshama, which is a chelik Eloah mimad, which is a part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. And we tend to think that there is a clear division between the physical world and the spiritual world. And sometimes we even think that they're totally incompatible. Sometimes we think and it's all true, except that it has to be put in proper perspective. Sometimes we think that they're antagonistic to each other. And all of that can be, and it doesn't have to. But you have to understand that certainly the concept of neshama of a man is, as we just stated, in a very short form, and we will speak about it at length on another occasion. But you have to understand what spirituality in the world is, and where it comes into contact with the physical world in a fascinating manner. HaKadosh Baruch Hu filled the entire world. Before there was a creation, before there was a world, he filled everything. You can't even call it the world. It wasn't the world yet. He just filled all. It was endless from beginning till end. There was no beginning, there was no end. It was HaKadosh Baruch Hu all over. We cannot think in eternal terms. We cannot think in terms that are not physical. But even if we had to translate this into a physical way for us to understand it, so whatever there was, it was filled with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There was nothing else but HaKadosh Baruch Hu. In order for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to create a world, and everything that the world contains, and I mean the entire world with the galaxies and everything else, not Earth alone, all the planets. HaKadosh Baruch Hu had to constrain himself. He had to remove himself from the greater space that we're speaking about in order to allow the existence of a world, in order that there should be. So if we think of it in physical terms, take this room, and I'm telling you it's not physical at all. I'm just saying it as an example so you should understand. If the room were packed from wall to wall with Svarim as we have them here, wall to wall, and I wanted to bring in these chairs, I would have to remove some of the Svarim in order to be able to bring in the chairs and the tables, right? There would have to be a minimizing of what we have. That's on a physical level, but we can't even understand. I'm just giving it to you because I just want to make one point that we can understand. The one point that we can understand is that there cannot be a part of that world where once HaKadosh Baruch Hu occupied it, that does not leave a mark of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You understand? So if God was all over, as he removed himself to allow the world to exist, that space was already saturated with the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So therefore, there can be nothing in the world that is free of at least a substance of full existence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in that spot, in that place. So Kedusha is all over. HaKadosh Baruch Hu remains all over, even though he has removed himself to allow the creation of the world, because he was there once, because he's still there, the Kedusha is all over. So what I want to try to do today, before we speak about man, is to show you how there is a spirituality to everything in the world. I don't know how much time we're going to have, but we'll go step by step. HaKadosh Baruch Hu creates a world and creates beasts and animals in the world. He tells Adam HaRishon, U'mora'achem v'chitechem yeh hakol hayat ha'aretz ve'hakol of hashamayim. The animals, the birds, everyone will fear man. There will be a fear for man. That's the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world and created man. A world at its perfection, the wild beasts are afraid of man. What happens is that man is created with the Tzelem Elokim, as we will speak at a later date, with the image of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the animals, they sense the image of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in man. So it's impossible for an animal to attack man, according to the rules of creation. Impossible. Man, an animal looks, a lion looks at the man, at the woman, and he says, this is the creation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu with the Tzelem Elokim, with the image of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Impossible that there could be any desire in the part of the animal or the beast to attack man. What actually happens is that as man sins, the presence of the Tzelem Elokim is disturbed, it's minimized, the image of HaKadosh Baruch Hu disappears with the sin, and now the animals are not seeing the Tzelem Elokim. They see a man, they see a woman, but the godliness in them, the image of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not there because man erased it through sins. And now they can actually go and attack man. The Gemara tells us, very simple, En chaya sholetet ba'adam. It is impossible for a beast to control man. Only when in the eyes of the beast, this man looks like an animal. When the man lost the Tzelem Elokim and he became just like any other creation, then the beast recognizes. And we're going to see how the animals have a sense of Kedusha. They have a sense of the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and everything that comes with it that is fascinating. We find the first example with Cain. Cain sins and kills his own brother, and he tells HaKadosh Baruch Hu, as we spoke on Shabbat recently, the whole conversation that they had. And he tells him, now that I've sinned, again, anybody who will find me will kill me. That's what Cain told HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, okay, don't worry, I'm going to put an oath, a sign on your forehead, and for 7 generations, nobody's going to touch you. That's what happened with Cain. Cain recognized that with his sin, his Tzelem Elokim was down. Who was Cain worried about? The animals. There were no human beings. There was Adam, Chava, Cain, and Hevel, and Hevel was no longer there. The world was populated by the beasts and the animals. And Cain's concern was, now that I sinned and my Tzelem Elokim left me, the animals will attack me. Whatever they'll find me, they'll attack me. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives them a replacement, Tzelem Elokim, a substitute, to make sure that the animals do not attack him. This is from creation. HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave the animal world a sensitivity to Kedusha. They have it. They feel it. They know it. And we'll see some more examples. The end of times, Mashiach times, what is Mashiach times known for? What's the big prophecy that will happen at the end of times? Vegar ze'ev im keves. The wolf, together with the lamb, will live together in peace. There will be no hurting. The animals will not in any way hurt each other or man. They will not have the ability to devour. And the commentators tell us it's very simple. The moment there is no sin in the world, then there is no power. The Tzelem Elokim is back. There is no power for the animals to touch us. It's a natural result of what's happening. What gave power to the animals? The animals were created not to touch man. Not to touch man. And we find Daniel goes into he goes into a den of lions. They don't touch him. They don't touch him because the animals are trained, and when the Tzelem Elokim is there, there's no way you can come. There's no way. This is HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself. Man is the image of HaKadosh Baruch Hu himself, and the animals see it. When Mashiach will come, when everybody will be in a position where they're not sinning anymore, there won't be a Yetzer Hara, the natural result will be that the animal world will live at peace with man. So you see how HaKadosh Baruch Hu inherently made the animals sensitive to Kedusha. So we have some examples, I'll just bring you some. There's plenty. The Gemara in Chulin tells us, Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair ikla la yoshpiza. Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair went, he was on a trip, and he was invited by his host, and they put oats in front of his donkey. Loachar, the donkey didn't eat the oats. They were tired, they came from a trip. The donkey's natural instinct is to eat. You put food in front of a donkey, he's not going to eat. Obviously. Doesn't want to eat. So Gemara says, Chavetinu. They went and they decided maybe he's a very particular donkey and he likes gourmet food only. So they started sifting it. There may be some stuff that will bother him. He didn't eat it. So they decided, let's sift it by hand. Maybe the sieve that they used was not the proper one. So they sat and they went grain by grain and they sifted it. They put it in front of him, he wouldn't eat it. So they came to Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair and they told him, what do we do with your donkey? He doesn't seem to like our oats. So they told him what happened. They told him, we thought maybe there were pebbles, there were this, it's all clean, it's the best that you can have. So he asked him, did you take off Maaser? Did you take off the tenth that you have to take off to give to this? So they said no. So they told him take off. They went, they took off Maaser, and the Hamor of Pinchas ben Yair sat himself down to a good meal. The Chachamim tell us that according to Halacha, they didn't have to take off Maaser. He was Mahmir. The Hamor, yeah, it was, why? because Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair was a Hasid. Yeah, so because the Chachamim tell us, כשם שהצדיקים הראשונים היו חסידים, כך בהמתן חסידות כמותן. The same way the Chachamim Arishonim were Hasidim themselves, that they went beyond the law, so they're animals also. They were influenced. It's because there is room for spirituality even in a Hamor. Hamor, by the way, is the thickest, yeah? The most Chumri. Chumri is the very word that we use for materialistic and physical. It's Homer. The Hamor is the most. And Hamor, being at the lowest of the lowest, he can sense that this is not food that my master would eat. His master is a Hasid, he will not eat it. There's another famous story similar like this of a Hasid that sold his cow to a goy, and he probably was a Hasid, he was an honest man, and he told the goy, perfect cow, will plow, will work like you never saw before. Takes the cow, works a couple of days, comes Shabbat, the cow doesn't want to work. So he came running to this Hasid, and he told him, you cheated me. The cow worked a couple of days and wants to take off now, on vacation. So he said, yeah, okay, let me go to the cow. He went to the cow and whispered in the ear of the cow, you should know you're no longer working for a Jew. So you must work on Shabbat. And the cow began working on Shabbat. As a result of this story, the name that was given to the Hasid, his name was Rabbi Hanina. His name became Rabbi Hanina ben Torta, the son of the cow, which means the man who, the story with the cow, yeah? Because the cow was so well trained that Shabbat is Shabbat. The cow knew when Shabbat was. The cow knew that the day of Shabbat you don't work. These are real stories that happened in amazing ways through you will find them all along. There's another amazing story, if I find it. I think I'll find it now. Okay. There's a famous story at the time of the Khurban, that the Jew was plowing with his cow, and an Arab passed by. And he asked the Jew, are you Jewish? So he told him, yeah. So he told them, get rid of your cow and the plow, because the Beit HaMikdash got destroyed now. So he told them, how do you know? I know it from the way the cow was mooing. From the noise that she was making, I know that she's crying for the destruction of the Mikdash, and this was very fun. Then he told them right after, now you can take back your cow and put back the plow. The Tialid Prikehon de Yudai, the Mashiach was born, which we know that at the time of the Bet HaMikdash, the Mashiach was born. It's a long story. He asked him why. Again, he says, you see, there was a different noise coming from the cow, different than the first one. This one is a happy one. And the truth is, the Midrash goes, it's a very long Midrash, we don't have time. The Midrash goes into telling us how he went. He got rid of his cow, he went to Yerushalayim, and he actually found a boy that was born at the time of the destruction, and he died, that boy. The whole story there. Okay, but the fact is that here is an Arab who can hear a mooing of a cow, and from the mooing of a cow, he is able to recognize when that was a specialty, but it's as impressive, the Arab, as the cow, right? But the cow is more impressive. Yeah, the cow is more impressive that she was able to feel the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. Today we know. Today science proves that animals sense a lot of things before they happen. They have an extra sense that we don't have. The Gemara goes even further and says not only do they have a sense of Kedusha and they recognize it as we saw, not only can they have a sense, like as far as the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash, that the world was shaken and they sensed the lack of Kedusha, they have that ability to see that something is missing. The Gemara in Eruvin tells us, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, Imale lo nitna Torah. If we didn't have the Torah, Rabbi Yochanan says, Ainu lomdim tzniut michatul. We would learn the laws of tzniut, of modest behavior, from a cat. Vegezel minemala. We would learn not to steal from the ant. Ve'arayot miyona. We would learn not to commit adultery from the dog. And v'derech eretz mitarnegol. And we would learn from the rooster how to behave in connection with intimacy with one's wife. The animals were given a certain sense of moralities, even, that would have taught the world if we didn't have it to them. A cat will not make in public. It's nude. The cat will go, will hide, whatever it has to be, and will cover what has to be covered. There is a level of modesty, of shame in a cat that other animals don't. So we would have learned from the cat's nude. The ant collects the whole summer the food that she needs for the winter, and they pile it up. And the rest of the ants, when there is one ant, there is 1,000, right? You all know that. The rest of the ants will pass by, and they will know not to touch. You will never see an ant taking what doesn't belong to them. So we would have learned together from them. The Yonah is the one bird that cannot be with any other type of bird. He sticks to his own mate, and he cannot mate with anybody else. And the Tarnegol knows how to appease his female before they come to be together. And we would have learned that from the Tarnegol. So you see that they have a certain sensitivity to what's holy and what's the proper behavior that we don't seem to attribute very much to the animal world, even though it's there. Just to end off, the Gemara, the Talmud Yerushalmi tells us of a story. There is a pasuk, B'risot Hashem darchei ish, gam ohevav yashlim ito. When HaKadosh Baruch Hu is happy with the ways of man, even his enemies will make peace with him. And the Gemara there tells us of a story of two shepherds that got some milk from the animals, and they put it in a container, And at some point, a snake came and started drinking. A poisonous snake started drinking from the milk. When they came to drink the milk, the dog started barking, like telling the owners, "Don't touch the milk; it's poisoned." Yeah. When he barked and they disregarded him, they didn't understand him, the Gemara says that the dog jumped in and drank from it and died. He saved the life of his masters. We know dogs are very loyal. And this Maaseh in the Gemara tells us the level of sensitivity, of what's right, of spirituality. Like who's ready to give up a life for somebody that you owe him a favor to, yeah, or somebody who's sustaining you, whatever it is that the dog feels. That type of loyalty, yeah, it comes from the understanding that man has, and an animal is not even expected to have. We have a neshama, so our neshama helps us to come to the conclusions of what's right and what's wrong, and we have a Torah that teaches us. They have an instinct that because HaKadosh Baruch Hu filled the entire world, and the presence of HaKadosh Baruch Hu is always there, even when he's so-called removed himself to allow the world to be. That Kedusha is there impacting every single creation, from the smallest insect to the biggest, powerful, mighty animal and beast, that at times you will see. We can tell you all the stories about all the Chachamim that sat, and the lions came and sat next to them and they didn't budge. There is hundreds of Chachamim that we know that these things happen because of the sense that they have for Kedusha. So you would think that this is good for man, and this is good for living creatures like animals. So let's go to the world of vegetation. In the world of vegetation, Chachamim tell us, "En lecha kol esef ve'esef she'en lo mazal barakia, shemakeh oto ve'omer lo gedal." There isn't a single blade of grass that does not have an appointed mazal, an appointed being that tells him, a malach that tells him, grow. And then the blade grows. It doesn't happen naturally. We think you go out, the blade is growing, the blades of grass are growing, and it happens. No, it doesn't happen. Look at your neighbor's grass and you'll see how it doesn't grow as good as yours, or vice versa. Every blade, there is someone, a spiritual being, telling the blade, now it's time to grow. And every small millimeter of growth is dictated from heaven. So we don't believe that there is a single blade of grass in the world that is not connected to a spiritual existence. Albeit it's not the spiritual existence of a Jew learning Torah and keeping Torah, but nevertheless, we have to understand that that's what happened. The Midrash tells us the following: when Adam HaRishon ate from the tree, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kadosh Baruch Hu put him outside of Gan Eden. And he was going from tree to tree, trying to get leaves to cover himself. Now he was conscious of his nakedness, and he knew that he had to cover himself, so he started going from tree to tree. And the trees refused to in any way accommodate. What did they say? To every tree that he came, they called him thief. You stole the mind of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You tricked HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You cheated HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the trees would push him away. You will not get a leaf from me. Every tree told him that. The fig accepted to give him a leaf. leaf to cover himself. And this is used by the Chachamim that the tree that Adam HaRishon ate from is a fig. Because the fig was part of the sin. So obviously, couldn't say, you're ganav, what are you, right? I ate from you, it's your fruit that got me into this, right? So this is proof to some of, it's a big machloket what the tree was, but this is used for those that hold that the tree was a fig tree. With Cain, we find the same thing. It says, Vayeshev Cain be'eretz Nod, that Cain went to live in the land of Nod. Nod is to shake. So the Chachamim say, why was it called Nod? Kol makom shaya olech hayta haaretz mizda'za'at. Wherever he went, wherever Cain walked, the earth shook under it. And the people used to say, remove yourself from him. This is the person that killed his own brother. And wherever he went, it was Eretz Nod. It was a land that was shaking. Because the earth is sensitive also to the level of divinity in the world. And the earth knew that this man that is walking now is a man who murdered. And the earth knew it and felt it and reacted. There's one fascinating halakha that shows you really how amazing this concept is. One of the ways, Jews were good at agriculture. And they had all kinds of chokhmot on how to produce from the land. One of the melachot that they used to have, it's called mavrich. That's what it's called in Hebrew. And the translation is to bend. So what they used to do is like this. They had a tree with branches. They would take a branch, bend it, and somewhere in the middle, bury it in the ground. So the branch would take roots. Okay? And eventually, when the branch took its own roots, they would cut it off from the trunk, and you had another tree growing from the same. But there was a period of time that it is attached to the trunk, to the tree, and it's on the ground on its own until it's severed. So there's problems with halakha in this, in wanting to know, the Chachamim want to know what status does this branch have. Is it part of the tree, or does it have its own status, even though it is connected to the tree? Obviously, if it's disconnected from the tree, when the roots took in and they cut it off, it's on its own, right? But during that period where it's still attached to the tree and yet it's nurturing itself from the ground also, is it to be looked upon as a new tree or part of the old tree? And there's many halachot here concerned about Allah. The 3 years is a part of the tree already that was there before. So if the tree was past 3 years, you can eat the fruits of this branch. Many other halachot that are concerned, referring to this. So the Gemara tells us that there is one simple rule, and the words that the Mishnah says, "Im davar bari hu shehu chai mikoach hazekena." If it is 100% clear, davar bari means it is very clear that it's nurturing from the tree, then it belongs to the tree. It's part of the tree. Im davar barihu she yonek me'az yalda, that shuchai mina yalda, if it is clear to you that it's nurturing from itself, from the new planting, then it's considered a tree on its own. Good? Now we have the answer. The Chachamim say, how do you know? How do you know? where it's nurturing. Sure, there's a time that it's like day one. I know it's nurturing straight from the tree. It can't be, but there was going to be a time where I'm going to have a doubt whether the roots are sufficient enough to nurture on its own, or it's still nurturing from the original tree. How do you know? So the Chachamim tell us very simple. Look in which direction the leaves of the tree, of this new tree, are looking. If they're looking towards the older tree, yeah, that means they're growing on their own. As soon as you see that the leaves are turning towards the old tree, the mother tree, that means they already set their own roots and they're living off their own, nurturing of their own. If the leaves are turning the other way around, giving their back to the tree, that means that they're still nurturing from the tree. Okay? So logic would tell you different, yeah? Right? That's what logic would tell you. So, what's the logic here? Because here we're saying that if you're nurturing from the tree, yeah, you're turning away from the tree. I would say my logic would tell me if the leaves are looking towards the tree, that means that's where it's getting its nourishment from. And if it's turning away, that means it no longer needs the tree. It's looking into itself, right? But that's not what it is. If it's looking at the tree, it's on its own. If it's looking away from the tree, it's... So the Chachamim tell us it's very simple why this is so. Achal min chavre, we have a rule that the person that eats from his friend, that he's sustained and supported by his friend, bahit mistakel be, he's embarrassed to look at him. So the tree, the leaves, when they're taking from the mother, yeah, they're taking from somebody else, they're embarrassed to look. So they turn the other way. When they're taking on their own, they're no longer dependent on the other tree, then they don't feel the shame anymore that they're taking, and they look at the tree. Amazing. Like it's unbelievable that the Chachamim see these leaves. I mean, so we see sunflowers turning. Like we know that the concept of direction is there. But look what the Chachamim tell us. That even the trees, even the leaves, they have the concept of embarrassment because they're taking from somebody else. They're taking charity from somebody else. And that's why they cannot face the person, the tree that they're taking charity, as a person would not be able to face the person that is giving. Would be embarrassed all the time. Would move away, try not to meet the person. So the tree does the same. So this is how far there is spirituality in the world of vegetation. We know clearly that the Chachamim tell us, Mishachara Bet HaMikdash, the Gemara in Sotah, from the day that the Bet HaMikdash got destroyed, Nital Ta'am HaPerot, there was the taste of the fruit is gone. You think Canadian fruit is bad? This really, like, it's not even called fruit in relation to what fruit used to be before the destruction of the temple. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Af Nital Shuman HaPerut. Rabbi Yossi says it's not only the taste that they don't really taste, even the juice, the Shuman is like the fat, but meaning the juice of the perot is not there. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar Omer, Tahara batla ta'am v'reach. The moment there was no purity because the Bet HaMikdash was destroyed, the taste and smell of the fruit disappeared. If there is taste and smell to a fruit, it's only because the elements of Kedusha that there is in the world allow it. It's totally dependent on that. There is a Bet HaMikdash, there is Tahara, then there is the best taste that you can't even imagine. Fruits that you can't even hold in your hands, in the quality and the size of what the land was producing, because it's totally related. Maaser bitel shuman dagan. The Chachamim tell us that the moment Maaser was no longer given because of the destruction, then the grains became all dried up. The beautiful grains that we eat today, and we're so much into grains, it's straw in comparison to what used to be before the Beit HaMikdash. All these things exist only because of the level of Kedusha that there is in the world. And they're the ones that dictate the quality of what we're going to get. So here you have a world of vegetation that is totally dependent on the level of Kedusha. Even to go this, to me this piece always amazed me, like even embarrassment. Even today, the world talks, because we have so many plants at home. So they talk about playing music, about a house where there's fights, they don't grow properly, you see the sadness in the plants. Today, people are into all this. They have psychiatrists for plants. You understand? Because they're suffering the consequences of their homes. Before, a plant was a plant. Nobody thought for a moment that anybody was affecting the plant. It grew, you put water, and it grew. It's not like that. It's not like that. The plants are sensitive. The plants understand. They also have busha. They also understand when something is wrong, and they feel it. Today, they can prove it. Today, the specialists will tell you what's wrong with the plant, psychologically, what's affecting the plant for not growing, even though you're putting water, and the sun is reaching it, whatever it is, something is wrong. So look at the plants of the house, and you'll know what's going on in the house. People believe this. We know that the plants, we know that there is nothing that is void of the Shekhinah. The Chachamim tell us, that was the lesson of Moshe Rabbeinu at the Sinai. HaKadosh Baruch Hu appears to him in the bush to tell him, En makom panui min ha-Shekhinah. There isn't a simple place in the world where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not found. A bush, small, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is found. So that concept we understand, but we don't understand to what level it goes, to the quality. And you will see the countries, different countries, I'll tell you, the fruits in Morocco, when there were big tzaddikim around, they were a million times better than the Canadian and American fruits. There's no question. There's no question. There was Kedusha. There was more Kedusha. There was a better produce of the land. And this is after the Churban Abayit, where we have no idea what this is. There's one more world, and that's a world of the innate that doesn't move, and has no life. Till now we spoke about living creatures to some level. The Chachamim tell us, a place of Kedusha has Kedusha, and provides an opportunity for Kedusha. For example, they tell us, Sayagea betalmudo, bebet ha-Knesset, lo bimera u'meshakeh. A person that works hard in the study of Torah, in the place of Kedusha, in the Beit HaKnesset, he will retain what he learns much faster than in another place. Because being that the place is holy, so it helps to sustain what the person is doing. We find in Pirkei Avot, Shenaim sheyoshvim ve'em benehem divrei Torah. Two people that sit, and they don't learn Torah together. And they're talking nonsense, they're just sitting and schmoozing and not learning Torah. It's called Moshav Litzim. It's a sitting of corners. That's it. So the question is, why are you talking about a Moshav Litzim? One would think that two people that are sitting and not learning Torah, Arehem Litzim. The two people are scorners. They're making fun of the world. Like God give you time. God gave you life. And you're spending your life in shtuyot instead of appreciating every minute that you have and spending it in something holy. So that's what the lit is. But the Chachamim tell us that they wanted to give us a bigger message. Even the place where they're sitting becomes a Moshav Litzim. If I come and I sit there to learn Torah in that place, I'm going to have a problem. Because The place, even the earth, where one stands, absorbs the feelings of that person, absorbs and is affected by what the person is doing. A person who's doing something good will breathe that into the place, and the place will naturally have a singular to do good. A place that it's meant things that are not good are being done will draw into it the negativity of what's wrong, and it will pass it on to the people that will come later into that place. We find objects. Elisha breaks the Jordan River with the tunic of Eliyahu Navi. Tunic of Eliyahu Navi. Elisha with the boy that died. Remember, with the Shunammite that she couldn't have children, and she had a child, and at the end the child died, and he wanted to revive him. He sends Gehazi. He sends his shamash with his staff, with his cane, and tells him, go and put it on. The Kedusha, we know the Kedusha. Now we know of tzaddikim that with their canes, miracles are done. With the cane of a tzaddik, We know, Rabbi Yitzhak ben Walid, they used to say that any woman that was having difficulty giving birth, they got the cane of Rabbi Yitzhak ben Walid, and they put it on her, and it helped. The Kedusha, the cane, becomes a davar kadosh. So here is a piece of wood that you would think that there is a minimal value to it. The fact that it's serving kedusha, the fact that it's used by somebody who's kadosh, in itself becomes as kadosh as a Sefer Torah, almost. And it has the power to have the effect that it has, because spirituality goes. There is a concept of a soul to everything that HaKadosh Baruch Hu created in the place that he filled. In this world that we have, there is a soul, a concept of soul everywhere. A chair where a Talmid Chacham sat, you go, you sit. It's saturated with Kedusha. Saturated with Kedusha. You go, it's at the king, Take turns, sit in the chair, We went to Rabbi Yitzhak ben Walid, I told people, sit in the chair. You know what Kedusha there is? You walk into places. You walk into some of these Batei Knesset and you sense it. You go into the Arizal, you go into this. The Kedusha of hundreds of years is still there. The walls, you feel different. Immediately your neshama feels totally different as you're walking into these places. Because the Kedusha is there. The walls are saturated with the Kedusha of the people that were there. There is nothing that is free of that soul, of that divine element that Kadosh Baruch Hu put in the world. So much so that Sefer Hasidim, which was one of the important Sfarim, writes the following: Im tireh bayit shel tzaddik, if you see a house of a tzaddik, or Bet Knesset, or a Bet HaKnesset Charev that got destroyed, or Reshaim Darimbo, or there is Reshaim living in those homes, Da sheYisrael hayu darimbo derech bizayon. You should know that Jews lived there in an improper manner, in a disrespectful manner. And that's why it got where it is. That's why it got destroyed, or that's why there is Reshaim living in it, because the Jews who had it misused it and took away the Kedusha of the place. And he writes, Le'olam lo ya'asu an-nochrim ra'a ela im ken ya'asu Yisrael ra'a techila. There is never that the Goyim are going to destroy anything and do anything bad that the bad was not first initiated by the Jews. If something is kept holy and the Jews keep it holy, it will remain forever. You see, some synagogues, hundreds of years, thousands of years, they remain. They're still there too. Whether they become museums, whatever they become, but the names, they're not sold. Why? Why the other ones? Yes, it's always a troubling question. Very simple. If the Jews conduct themselves properly and allow the Kedusha that was there of that cemetery is a place of Neshamot also. The Neshamot come down also. Yeah. And we go to speak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the Zechut of that Tzaddik. That's what we do. So it's not. That's also good, but but we believe also that the body of the tzaddik doesn't disintegrate. So like actually the tzaddik is full body still there as day one. So that's one reason to go to the kever also. But when you're standing in front of the kever, you're reminding HaKadosh Baruch Hu that you came, you made an effort to visit the tzaddik, so the zechuyot of the tzaddik should go for you. But yeah, sure, there's no question that going to a house of a tzaddik that is still properly kept as such, yeah, that the kedusha was not changed is also good. It's also good. And you know, they say that people used to be afraid to live in the homes of the tzaddikim. When the tzaddikim passed on, it was a big responsibility to go into the house and live in the houses of the tzaddikim. The Chazon Ish passed away in Bnei Brak, nobody wanted his house. At the end, they decided to make a yeshiva from it. It's the only solution. People say, well, I'm going to come. Can you imagine, have the picture of the tzaddik, watching you, everything you do. So, okay.